close, take a deep breath. Now let yourself drift now in night. Repent. Well, have riches. The being we call human has only just begun to break away from the herd, has only recently learned to walk on two legs, yet still trembles in the dark at night, still fears the shadows of predators. The sun is setting. The redness on the horizon is fading. And then Chandi on trying. Trout count. If God shined gekite found men from separate big get it dots. Yeah, now yeah, that my bad day. This sect wife mages and we portain rise than was, but we call darkness is nothing more than a temporary moment we erase with the press of a button. But back then, when night fell, the world was pitch black. There was no hearth. Tear off, no torts, no charms, then pierced, dickly swathes real of the caves where early humans lived. A sign of satis came from within it, when shard waved delvdos, to science outsideist qualsive, lay screen every bit of soil, carries the trace of that moment which changed the course of human history. But up until 1.6 million years ago, that trace is absent. Then, when you move up to an upper layer, all at once ash-covered bones and pieces of burned earth begin to appear, as if one night something changed. So what happened that night? Something changed. So what happened that night? We do not know for certain. Archaeologists look at the fragments in their hands and draw out history. Semkids has quinades, perhaps 4,000 pt many mar. Would fire ramen, approved it again and Wessenauf preserved only in scientific reports. Human memory has also kept this moment alive in myths, legends, and oral traditions. Because when something is important enough, we tell it from one generation to the next. We carve it into stone. We turn it into songs. We fidget into tales. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia tell that fire set train in straight rain for it. In which right white hat dead stare an old woman struck two stones together and smat weir, and worth reseven the verse. The questions Atoria too. There is an old tale. Fire came down with lightning striking the mountain tops. A brave young man took a burning branch and ran with it back to his cave. From that day on, a fire always burned at the mouth of that cave. Perhaps the truth is hidden in all of them. Perhaps and perhaps the bravest among them held out a branch to that fire and carried its burning teeth to Palmrain, with its mart with a red light glowing at its tip. The others around you recoil in fear. Some cry out. Some look as though they are about to pick up stones and throw them at you, but you stand still. You place the light on the ground, and that light begins to dance within the darkness. According to one tradition, humans did not discover fire, fire humanity. On what ends mostly for power up. Want but bought. Inside, people huddled close together, but there is no fire in the middle. Only darkness. And outside, people huddled close together, but there is no fire in the middle. Only darkness. And outside, in the distance, a light perhaps from a forest burning, perhaps from lightning striking. And then a hand reaches out, perhaps a child wand, perhaps a child's both, but it is not enough. It must be protected, master, wanba, treep, wanba thin. It's a wide cruised, but this time a light begins to appear in the darkness. Far away, perhaps beyond the mountains, the sky suddenly lights up. A sound light begins to appear in the darkness. Far away, perhaps beyond the mountains, the sky suddenly lights up. A sound like thunder, yet deeper, fierce and certified with gay and for clever but spell for metrons but never coming. The flames burnt egressent his, and then the fire died out. What remained was a blackened stretch of land, charred trees, and a strange smell. People kept their distance from the fire in fear, but then curiosity prevailed. They wanted to understand what this strange thing was, something they had never seen before in full. In the excavations at Kubi Foya, in a layer dating back 1.6 million years, burned bones and pieces of charred wood were suddenly found. This use was faith. Some say that Homo erectus, living at that time, had already begun gathering automals, mildly, but perhaps people simply came to the place after the fire had gone out and benefited from the lingering warmth. Who can know? Legends, however, tell of this encounter into the place after the fire had gone out and benefited from the lingering warmth. Who can know? Legends, however, tell of this encounter is stories told lays quelled. The bird appeared. It bit scored fight. Would the undition be Simon will pim wall samar an might, but they paid dearly for it. The jaguars became humanity's enemies forever. Perhaps it truly was like that. Perhaps the first human to encounter fire met it with fear. Because fire was not fire was too afraid, beckoned a forest. Because fire was not only warmth, it was also destruction. It could turn a forest to ash, wipe out a herd of animals. But at the same time, the people gathered around it could for the first time double clear marked feel in evil so that it will catch a zapping by. There could be whists and they bell about. They free from right for all the heat. They take a branch, a burning piece of branch, the light trembles in their hand. With fear, curiosity, and excitement, they run back toward the cave, the time the salve cray, but rhyme twinged, by flames of a flames up about to go out, at once they brim flames set round stead, but levaim tried a flame twine plumbed, the fence of spells, but about the fun fell spavers rested of the inside of the cave is eliminatins at asek. When na fight witsimi. Ditchen one humans first saw fire, the emotion they felt was not fear, but awe, because fire is unlike anything else. It is not fixed like earth, nor does it flow what water, nor is it invisible like the wind. Fire both those lund, fire both in cells and wine herent, because on this end is not, it both lives and else. It is then keels, in the face of fire, a human escate in movers commit the blessed cause to but this tide, as not far, what harmony arsent. It's time there is a light thins walls of the cave. Its light makes shadows dance on the walls of the cave. And now, would you touch it? Perhaps the first hand to hold fire was a child's hand. Perhaps an old woman's, who knows? But one thing is certain, humanity's touching of fire may be the greatest act of courage in history. When history ild kyled retrial constant, but an act shouldn't multiply ritually getting touched half my. Perhaps a child was shivering, perhaps someone sick needed warmth, or perhaps where's our as an equation was. Today we stop a child from reaching a hand toward fire, but back then no one stopped them, because no one knew. Learning what fire was, what it could do, and how one should behave around it, happened through trial, through burning, through pain. Some scientists say that humanity's beginning to use fire was actually a very long process. First they feared fire, then they dared to stand beside it, then they learned to fight that fired. Perhaps they carried those marks for the rest of their life. But those marks were also humanity's greatest teacher. They learned that fire causes pain, but also Gunsove transforms. Among the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, there is a ritual connected to fire. When young men reach adolescence, they go through a trial by fire. They hold their hands over the flames. They must endure the time. They grew fire. They crowed wait hand toward the flames. They must endure the pain. Yet from this and reasons 5 well. 2 and how 1. Think Hafnet said the first one to touch fire was not the bravest, but the most desperate. Perhaps they were so cold that they were willing to risk the pain. Or perhaps they were so ill that warmth was their only hope. Who can know? Now think of that moment. Inside the cave, a small fire is burning on the ground. The others have formed a circle. Watch straight at us patent wrote that notes what flee that sidvagwite for bite that's amidst the fucking secret mother casting sash at man of fatal making stem defects and as if it next they parish by good fipe. But as scenting with atascenties when summaries. From that day on, they will learn to respect fire, to feed it, to stay close to it, but not too close. Some anthropologists say that when humans learned to control fire, it completely changed their relationship with nature. Human beings were no longer creatures who only submitted to nature. Thanks to fire, they could transpire, to dre, but dended to stay cool is quasolvgb coiser per edoser henoesiet. Taus saws what a primero of it is. Il soros hopolis of vista de corvimero. By schema de codiscoticodo, ene colbetamene, sancho died. Il rus valudijo beneas. El colcho mi mescoes magorobes decagoacoes cotido gobico fedase choboglicobes. Povus mai, seden condoro. Aravia un hobarowe. El lerok. Arwero Kyle Yin Corosel Cobattle comes the body could board eight subgabitis capabilities to sickababilities society dates or to the gadlodo. or week or less, sega bahado lois batoyero dicalates, and laudus salsio alto quois about tobial questos etus mutilitas del do desobalvis delcas as et copacobas of flug that I did the sati beso, peresai, I raul viento, I laus is on the set and the tidy del. Pete Cuppets feel cup the adult swimmer's. Now think stick at the stomach, growls, your hands tremble, but plight into it hard, like rubber. Chewing takes hours, but then, one day, you put the same meat over a fire. Its smell changes, its color changes, you bite it, soft, it melts in your mouth. This moment may be one of the greatest nutritional revolutions in human histories. Scientists say there is a direct link between brain, accorded the famal calitmike, senauravayat kafis, raw meat, raw pinatine, raw steebend whence rafs, bemits when attained scarf, asamish is cooked out more easily. The stomach digests cooked food more easily. The energy astains crude, quote meat mates maint fork, food far exceeds that from raw food 5 pound, 20 trace, 6 Homo sap exa dindest quote, quote, well, the brain of Homo erectus was around 600 the whites weighed. His she's hun cornet what have tannin and to intestines shortened because there was no longer a need to chew and digest war for faust what bosentis and left. But this scientific fact also found its place in legends. In Greek mythology, when Prometheus brought fire to humans, he also gifted them cooked food. Zeus had forbidden humans from eating cooked meat because those who ate it would draw closer to the gods. Prometheus defied this ban and paid the price. But humans learned the taste of cooked food along with fire. An Oldian legend says fire first frightened humans, but when at white, and at that moment he encountered a Zentorn eater's town, Mayans Haven, the tweeters and force. People once ate everything raw. But one day, the spirit of fire appeared to them. Will you eat with me? With the mate asked. People were afraid, but the fire spirit took a piece of meat and held it over the flames. The meat cooked, its aroma spread, people tasted it, and from that day on they began cooking all their fire. Maybe but cooked meal was in male, but act fail faith. A pay codpig had an of a vitria complete adame. Then they consciously started placing meat over the fire, and then sitting by a mint warm it. You are by the fire. In your hand is a piece of meat skewered on a branch. You hold it over the fire. Fat drips, hitting the flames with sizzles. The color of the meat changes. Smoke carries the aroma, then you bring the meat to your mouth. Your bite, soft, melts in your mouth, not very different from the taste of meat of Uisen Cade, cause human steined makusens called mevk. Those 5 hours were devoted to making tools, speaking, storytelling, and perhaps, for the first time, art. Art for the peasants was. There's why the fire there was talking, sharing, learning. And all of this was made possible by the extra energy and extra time brought by cooked food. Close your eyes. Now imagine sitting around a fire. The flames are dancing, smoke rises, faces glow in the red light. No one of them then begins to something. His woes rise. Kest blades. This moment is one of the most important in human history. Because around the fire, language is born, stories are born. Scientists studying the origins of human language believe that fire played an important role, because language is not just a means of communication. It is also a means of sharing. To tell something means to share it with others, to remember it. People gathered around the fire, told each other what they saw on the hunt during the day, the dangers they encountered, the new fruits they found. These account gradually. Stories, excavations at cave in Israel uncovered a hearth dating back 400,000 years. In one area there are traces of stone tool making, in another food remains, and in another a more orderly, larger seating area. Archaeologists think this organized area may have been a place for storytelling, ritual, or social gatherings. Fire not only provided warmth, it also brought people together. At Border Cave in South Africa, around hair dating back 100,000 beads made from sillies, Ridwayan with mace, or mayful. But as much as scientific findings, the stories told around fire have also reached us. The Dreamtime stories of Australian Aboriginals have been passed down through thousands of years by being told around fires. In these stories, fire always holds a central place. Fire is the point where the spirits of ancestors descend into the world. Those sitting around the fire hear the voices of their ancestors gaining their wisdom equaves. Among the Hopi tribe of North America, there are creation stories told around fire. They walwe tied, but they diavich quite in ateliers smiten the adepts. But I tumblet, but outspatment is the missions wellness and banishes loneliness. Perhaps these tales are a reflection of thousands of years ago. It drives ago a quild in darkness and banishes loneliness, but wells lee, airs, voice, sile light. Bistrildus is trined, point to the flames dance of Dekive. Sayer, chide, it's said, the first flame, the first warmth. The children listen, mesmerized. The women, the men, everyone is silent. Under that moment, everyone feels the same thing, that indescribable feeling of being together, sharing, listening, and that moment, everyone feels the same thing. That indescribable feeling of being together, sharing, listening, and telling. Some anthropologists say that the stories told around fire allow humans to form a collective memory. Each individual remembers not only their own experience, but others. Ikwiget bilios, mapklut feet, beatus kuchbukwotind. Then smudge my speak like, you ward the bejord, the cave. You try to shoot it from the wind with your arms. The flame grows for a moment, then shrinks. Finally, you reach the cave. If you drop that spark onto the dry grass and thin branches you prepared beforehand, for a moment, nothing happened. Then, small wisp of smoke, then scrade. Tried grade, ved, archiar accessory set, way set pre. 9 to 6. Lesson deasons, myon to 18s. Waypeen fora bindicate that humans encountered fire but could not control it. Perhaps they took advantage of the heat after the fire went out. Perhaps they carried a burning vrang into the cave, but when the fire died, we should ben out your wide yawak. Excavations in Israel, traces of fire wane set and yos, traces of fire drayed hind were filed. That's out full sweat to desert there better can be. But one thing is certain, controlling fire took much longer than discovering it, because controlling fire is not just knowing how to light it, it is understanding it. Which wood burns better, which wind makes the fire grow, and which puts it out. How is fire fed? How is it carried? How is it protected? All of this was learned over thousands of years through experience, observation, mistakes, and suffering. Among the San people of Africa, there is a ritual for controlling fire. Elders teach the young how to light and protect fire. They say, their state, it is your friend, but if you turn your penepen, that it went, shore's enemy. They went, the zenapout of Simi. But it went out along the way. They went back and retrieved it again. It went out along the way. They went back and retrieved it again. It went out again. It went out again. The wind dame made a special container to carry the fire. They put embers inside and protected it from the wind. The fire reached the cave this way. This was balls, but could have been if smart cape perhaps they tried thousands of ways to protect, carry, and feed fire. File paroled. Meets file, lat moment. Deep in the cave, in a special place, there is a protected hearth. By the hearth, an elderly woman. For days, weeks, months, she did not let the fire go out. She waited day and night. She gave it dry wood, shielded it from the wind with her arms, covered it when it rained, the fire. Versailles was a trust to her because of it. But because if the forestry of lie had say God guides the key, warmth, safety, warm and feast, wife, dormants, any septupled. Fire became the most important person in the community. Fire guardians, fire priests, fire mothers, they were called by different names in different cultures. But their mission was the same, to keep the fire alive. Close your eyes. Now think of your eyes. Trade dright. Bit bat care. Steined. Stod boats been beefs. Played my mic put beaten. And fire was born. This moment is one of humanity's greatest victories over nature. Learning to rekindle fire was the file in Marty was the file. There was no need to wait for a natural blaze. Now, it wasn't necessary to carry or protect the fire. Fire could be recreated anytime, anywhere. Archaeological findings struggle to give a precise date for when humans learned to make fire. The traces of making fire are difficult to distinguish from taste and baitain anywhere. Archaeological findings, shrines, traders, brazibles, hair, kinds of flat erp, have a framed shay, flint with steel, but by striking one flint against another. Flint was one of humanity's first tools for making fire. When two stones are struck together, tiny sparks fly. If these sparks touch dry grass, fire ignites. But this is not as easy as it seems. Finding the right stone, striking at the right angle, preparing where the spark will fall, these require thousands of years of experience. Another method was rubbing wood. Rubbing 2 pieces of wood to generate heat from that frink to then assist fucking for being hit with the drag height to me for bones keep bike a cable. One piece of wood has a small hollow, the other a pointed tip. The pointed piece is rotated rapidly in the hollow. Friction generates heat. The heat turns the wood into powder. The powder turns into a spark, but this can take minutes or even hours. Hands get calloused, sweat flows, patience runs out. Scientists believe that making fire by rubbing wood enhanced human manual skills, patience and planning abilities. The patience and planning abilities developed alongside finding wedding. But alongside finding, there rates for codes, perhaps, but a hemp in Greek mythologies, steals fire from the gods and gods endures. Time ascents viable as fire itself. In North America's Blackfoot tribe, a legend about how to rub wood. This knowledge is as valuable as fire itself. In North America's Blackfoot tribe, a legend about how fire was made goes, once only, and young goes, once only, and the young man sequel a stew entemplit kofrolist kokkato. Death Creek fire with the bellows, struck iron with fire, the one tays that wit face the coal stones together. A spark flew. From that day on, fire belonged to everyone. Remote, or passant for Pabian, not one the victory of one over nature. Now you are the master of fire. Close your eyes. Now think of a family. They are sitting around a fire. Close your eyes. Now think of a family. They are sitting around a fire. The mother is handing cooked meat to her children. The father gives the largest piece to the mother. The elderly grandma sits at the warmest tapete. The chidil the coid abbold alkachi if sit word cow fucking torts during the they've dubs. The repound these fat the mass on their own. There was no hearth in the center. Everyone ate their own food. Sharing, in the sense we understand today, did not exist. Because sharing requires coming together, and coming together requires a center. Fire became that center. By one trees freed as ripples climbed. Show how fire changed human social structures. Excavations in the Kabara cave in Israel, another, Lada Kayad Sihit Naid Tzabiyas. Archaeologists believe this organized space could have been where the family or tribal elders sat. Fire also determines social hierarchy. In the Blombos cave in South Africa, shells painted with red ochre were found around hearths dating back 100,000 years. These findings indicate that people didn't just eat around the fire. Social activities like adornment, rituals, and perhaps even displays of status took place. Fire became a place that organized human relationships. But alongside scientific findings, there are also slides rockets fear. It's pretty funny do bim. The meat found portion was enough for everyone. The wood brought by one person warms a tomb. The Pala, the Iroquois tribe, tells how fire created the concept of family. Fire was once a secret kept only by elderly women. Elderly women gathered around the fire to teach young people about life. The young got to know each other around the fire, married, and formed families. Fire became the birthplace of the family. In Anatolia, in Kozisms, perhaps fire was a force that relieved human loneliness and connected people to each other. The person sitting around the fire notion for the wood. Wood was collected by everyone. Food was shared by everyone. Could fire have laid the foundation for the first communist society? Perhaps. Now think of that moment. You are by the fire. A woman is on your right, a child on your left, an elderly man in front of you, the piece of the meat you cooked. The child snuggles up to you, to Kelt Twan. It is also sharing warmth, time, and stories. One of the greatest things fire gave humans, learning to share. Some anthropologists say that fire created a culture of sharing, which distinguished humans from other living beings, because sharing is not just an action, it is also a thought. It is realizing that the person in front of you is like you, that they also need warmth, food, and attention. Fire brought this awareness. Close your eyes. Now imagine a god. He holds fire, his hand, his face, we eyes. This and terrifying, both creative and distinctive, quote. Be caught, the quote, taps. One of the oldest and most widespread mythological figures in human history. In almost every culture, there is a legend explaining how fire came, a god representing fire, and a ritual related to fire. Because fire is not just a tool for humans, it is also a mystery, burns but does not run out. It warms, but if you do not tend, it goes out. It's Prometheus loves humans who takes the fire, takes the fire and delivers it to humans hidden inside a fennel stalk. And he pays the price. He is chained to a rock. Every day an eagle comes and eats his liver. At night the liver regenerates, and in the morning the eagle returns. Endless pain. But the story of Prometheus is not just a tale of punishment. It is also a story of freedom. Because of this there is a much deeper tradition, Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism, fire is a symbol of God. The light of a horror monster is visible in fire. In Zoroastrian temples, fire is kept burning for days, months, and even years without being extinguished. This fire is kept burning for days, months, and even years without being extinguished. This fire is one of the oldest continuously burning fires in the world. It still burns in Iran and India. For Zoroastrians, fire symbolizes Perberais, and in every household, the fire burning on the hearth is citrite. This quote, Bishop Pretz. Among the Navajo tribe in North America, there is a fire spirit. It is the spirit that teaches humans how to ignite and maintain fire. But at the same time, it represents the dark side of fire spirit. Forest fires, volcanic eruptions, lightning strikes, these are the fire spirit moments of wrath. Humans must respect fire spiriters, Fontret, and in Atelian Alabissans. Fire symbolizes purification, unity, and divine fire. This pretends it is a bridge between the world and the heavens, between humans and gods, between life and death. To possess it, to control it, sets humans apart from other beings. But at the same time, it requires respect, humility, before sets humans apart from other beings. But at the same time, it requires respect and humility before it. Now, Mad Mint, midpoints. It is sent at the set for a beason of Foperis, Eudoskipet. Wet, 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 soft, moldable. You knead it as you wish, shape it as you like. You are making a pot, but clay cracks, crumbles, and breaks when it dries. If it rains, it dissolves. To make it permanent, something is needed. Fire. You bake the clay with fire. It hardens, becomes like stone, doesn't lead fire liar. Beyond my some selam over the more through the us, settle be kiddissippets curd of the sitstibberu the suppetwin. In trive devens, times, quaff. When a recent, but punch triumphed that word. Realiest ceramics were simple, coarse, and hand-shaped, but over time they learned to make thinner, harder, and more durable vessels. The invention of ceramics was a revolution in human history, because ceramics gave humans the ability to store grain, carry water, and cook food. They no longer had to bury food in animal skins, or store the vessels, protected grain, carry water, yeast, bits and fought and the people detonatime. Biberseppele first, which minor, wheatas work watery. From the Yangshao culture features intricate patterns in red and black paint, fish motifs, human figures, geometric shapes. These vessels were not just containers, they were storytelling tools. The patterns reflected the community's stories, beliefs, and worldview. In Japan, pottery from the oldest ceramics in the world, Pisens, Yold, Mines, behelwest words in in Anatolia, a 9,000-year-old Penic team. A tapping so were figures. They might have contained offerings for spirits rather than food. Fired clay became a sacred object. But ceramics was not just about making vessels roll tribeams. Hilnings built special stoves and kilns. Hilns were ceramics. These cones were rubbed, but to transcend strains I've that it become like skin the stealth stalls, but it cracked when dried. In frustration, she threw the pot into the fire. Into the fire Putin, the cracks sealed. Thus, the first pot was born. In Anatolia, a different legend exists. Fire once belonged only to the gods. After humans stole fire from the gods, they wanted to create something with it. They gave earth to the fire. Earth combined with fire, hardened, and took shape. From that day on, humans made fire. Now think of that moment. You are in front of you is a pot made of clay. You put it into the fire. The flames engulf it. The clay changes color, hardens. Then you take the pot out of the fire. It cools. You hold it in your hands. It is no longer clay, but like stone. You pour water into it. The water doesn't leak. In that moment, you feel a sense of achievement. By combining fire and earth, you have created something that did not exist before. Close your pacer. An ordinary stone. It's lying on the ground. No one is looking at it, but you throw it into the fire. It stays in the fire for days, weeks. Then you take it out of the fire. The stone is no longer a stone. Something bright, dazzling emerges from it. Metal, copper, maybe even gold. One of the greatest transformations in human history began just like this. Fire turned stone into metal, into tools. Tool in a mind thousand houses. At thousands built with copper, found in its pure form in nature, could be shaped by cold hammering. But the real revolution came when humans learned to melt and cast copper in fire. Copper melts at about 1005 degrees Celsius. Reaching this temperature was impossible with an ordinary stove. Humans developed special furnaces and bellows. They learned to increase and control the heat of fire. In Anatolia, near Satolhui, your copper bead was found of the world's oldest metal objects. It is 9,000 years old, small, simple, yet a giant step. The person who made that bead shaped it by melting copper in fire and casting it into a mold. This was the same process a modern engineer performs today. Metallurgy became humanity's first engineering science. After copper came tin. They learned to combine copper with tin to make bronze. Bronze was much harder than copper with tin to make bronze. Bronze was much harder than copper. Cutting tools, weapons, ornaments, bronze became the name of a new era, the Bronze Age. In Egypt, Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and China, magnificent bronze works. Then came iron. Iron was much harder than copper or bronze. It required much higher temperatures to melt, but humans learned to increase the heat of fire to smelt and forge iron. Iron transformed agricultural tools, weapons, and construction tools. The Iron Age is one of the greatest leaps in human history. In Anatolia, the Hittites were among the first civilizations to work iron. They valued iron so highly that they kept iron working a state secret. Iron was more practiced about binding to bones. It was also a symbolic one. Gold became the symbol of the sun, silver of the moon, copper of Venus, iron of war gods. Every metal had its own deity, mythology, and magic. In Greek mythology, Hephaestus was the god of blacksmiths, fire, and metals. In his forge on Mount Olympus, Hephaestus hammered the god's weapons, armor, and jewelry. In his forge, the fire never went out, the bellows never stopped. Hephaestus was also a lame god perhaps, to show how difficult and laborious black tried. They made the gods' most valuable weapons and finest jewelry. In their forges, the fire never went out. Their craftsmanship was legendary. In Anatolia, along the bend of the Kuzmuk River, there is a Hittite legend about ironworking. Iron was born underground, within fire. Master blacksmiths brought the underground fire to the surface, forged the iron rod, and shaped it. The blacksmiths were also magicians because transforming fire, metal, and stone was magic. Perhaps they knew the secrets of fire and the language of metals. In their hands, stone became metal. Metal became tools. Tools became civilization. Now imagine that moment. You are in a forge. In the center is a huge furnace. Flames rise, bellows go up and down. The master blacksmith takes a glowing red piece of iron from the fire. He places it on the anvil. He hammers it. Crack, crack, crack. With every strike, the iron changes shape. The master's eyes shine like fire. He is the might. In that moment, you see how iron transforms into a tool, a weapon, a work of art, and you realize how immense the transformative power of fire is in human hands. Close your eyes, but this time there is a shadow in the firelight. The flames dance, but within this dance, there is sorrow, fear, destruction. Because fire is not always a friend. Sometimes it is an enemy. Sometimes it is a merciless master. Sometimes it becomes a tool for the greatest evils humans inflict on each other. The dark side of fire is as old as human history. Fire, one of humanity's oldest fears, a forest fire, a cave fire, flays ket kichjo. Why that Keith squaw they day archaeological excavations bear traces of great fires in prehistoric times. In Satalhoshu, there is a layer of fire. One house burned, and the neighboring houses burned as well. Perhaps a heart attack accident, perhaps lightning, perhaps an enemy. Who knows? Fire is one of nature's greatest destructive forces. Even today, forest fires consume hundreds of square kilometers. Thousands of years ago, there were no tools to fight fire. The only option was to flee. Those left behind wayhasses of burned homes and memories. They also used it against each other. Wars revealed fire's most merciless face. Fire became a tool in sieges, the destruction of cities, and the burning of enemies. In ancient wars, fire was the greatest weapon. Archers would set their arrows alight and shoot them at the enemy. Besiegers hoped to collapse walls by setting fires under fortifications. Cities were burned, temples were burned, people were burned. Fire was the most terrifying face of war. In 600 BC, the Medes and Babylonians besieged Nineveh. The palaces, temples, houses, libraries, everything burned. Millennia-old civilization turned to ashes in a few days. Today, archaeologists excavating the ruins of Nineveh uncover layers of fire. Each layer carries the trace of destruction of fire. Rome was burned by the Gauls in 390 BC. In AD 64, half of the city perished in the Great Fire of Rome. It is said that Emperor Nero started the fire. Who knows? But fire left a deep scar in Rome's memory. Istanbul, fit hind it retweets. Emperor Justinian rebuilt the city after suppressing the revolt, but the traces of the fire still linger in Istanbul's memory. Fire did not only burn cities, it burned people too. In the Inquisition courts, heretics were burned, witches were burned, sinners were burned. Fire became a tool of humanity's cruelest tortures against itself. In medieval Europe, thousands of women were burned during witch hunts. Their crime was representing society's fears, the unknown, the foreign. Fire was said to purify, to save the soul. But yet the dark side of fire did not remain only in the past. It continues today in wars, firebombs, napalm, phosphorus shells. Fire is still a tool of humanity's greatest evils against itself. Perhaps that is why most legends about fire contain a warning. Prometheus suffers eternal pain for stealing fire. Agni is both friend and foe. The spirit of fire is angry if not respected. A legend from it, they used it for it. It said it would never be friends with humans again. From that day, fire always escapes human hands, always ready to burn. Perhaps that is truly the case. Perhaps fire is a force that must be respected. One should approach it as a friend, but never forget it can be an enemy. One should control it, but know it can never be fully controlled. Now imagine that moment. You are in a fire. Flames rise, smoke darkens the sky. People flee, screams, wails, everything left burnout. In that light, in that moment you realize fire is not only a friend, but also an enemy. Close your eyes. Now imagine a journey that lasts millions of years. In the beginning, there is darkness, cold, fear. Then a spark falls. A hand reaches out, catching that spark, and from that moment on, humanity walks together with fire. Fire follows humanity. Fire follows humanity. When we light the stove in our home, we perform the same action as the first human who protected fire in a cave thousands of years ago. Perhaps fire is humanity's from those ancient cave hearths to today's thermal power plants. From the first torches to today's rocket engines, from the first ovens to today's blast furnaces, fire has always transformed, always evolved, always followed humanity. The Industrial Revolution was a new era of fire. Coal became fire's new fuel. The steam engine transformed the power of fire into mechanical energy. Factories ran on fire. Railways moved with fire. Ships sailed with fire. Fire humanity into economate. Facts illegal. Had it yet have that I call it kick. People inhaled not only smoke, but also diseases. Then came oil. Oil was fire's new face. Cars moved with fire. Airplanes flew with fire. Fire gave humanity unprecedented speed, comfort, and possibilities. Yet there was still a price. The smoke of oil changed the climate. The earth warmed. The poles melted. This time, fire became a force threatening the entire planet. But fire is not only a tool of industry, transportation, and energy, it is also a tool of science. Rightquest and Philippides. By the telescopes unraveled the secrets of stars with fire. Fire became a means for humanity to connect with the universe. Today, fire occupies a very different place. We may no longer see it, yet it is still part of our lives. Electricity is another face of fire. Thermal power plants generate electricity with fire. Thermal power plants generate electricity with fire. Nuclear plants use fire in its deepest, most mysterious form. Solar panels capture the energy of the sun. The source of fire, wind harness winds created by fire. Fire remains guided, and is by quiet spited. Every culture has rituals involving fire. The Olympic flame reflects a tradition thousands of years old. Fires lit on New Year's Eve trace back to rituals chasing away the darkness of the winter solstice. Fires at weddings symbolize the union of two families. Fires at funerals see the soul sent to immortality. Humanity changed with fire, but fire also changed with humanity. Human imagination grew with fire. Human fears were shaped with humanity. Hinda find but to right fire. From the first spark to today's rocket engines, from the first cave hearth to today's nuclear reactors, from the first torch to today's laser beams, a journey lasting millions of years. Fire never went out. It only transformed. And humanity transformed. And humanity transformed along with fire. Perhaps fire is nothing outside of humanity. Perhaps fire is humanity itself. That spark burning inside humans' curiosity, passion, creativity, destructive. Close your eyes. Now we are at the end of this journey, but the fire has not gone out. It will never go out. Because fire was not just a flame burning in caves. Fire was not just a force burning in stoves, ovens, factories. Fire was a spark burning within humans, and that spark is still burning today. When we strike a match, turn a lighter, press the button on a stove, we are actually igniting the same fire as that first spark millions of years ago. Fire lives within our time. First spot more hild. We say like fire to describe passionate love. We say at all costs for something very precious. We say shirt of fire for the suffering endured. We say throw into the fire to take a risk. We say on fire to describe excitement. This fire burning in our language is, in fact, a reflection of the fire that burned in a cave millions of years ago. Fire lives in our culture. The fires we light on New Year's Eve. The fire lives in Hyru's. The fires with Noah's. All are part to try. Fire connects us to our ancestors. Fire connects us to each other. Fire connects us to life. Fire lives in our science. We study the fire of the sun, the fire of the stars, the fire within the earth. We try to unravel the fire of the atom. Fire is the key to understanding the universe's secrets. Fire is the very question science pursues. Energy, life, transformation. Fire lives in our dreams, the spark of curiosity in a child's eyes, the fire of passion in a scientist's laboratory, the fire of creativity in an artist's heart, the fire of love in a lover. All are descendants of that first spark. All are hidden within the fire that burned in a cave millions of years ago. Perhaps fire has never truly been outside us. Perhaps fire has always been within us. When the first human touched fire, they were actually touching the fire within themselves. That first spark coming at rose. It rode was out like today when we light a candle, a fireplace, a campfire, we are actually igniting the fire within ourselves as well. Watching the dance of the flames, we share the same feelings as the humans who watched the same dance in a cave thousands of years ago. Curiosity, excitement, peace, fear, reverence, all the same. Nothing has changed. Because fire is humanity's oldest, most loyal, most unchanging friend. But at the same time, fire is tathi. Because fire can turn its back at any moment. It can transform from friend to enemy at any moment. We must always remember it, always respect it. Now, keep your eyes closed. Feel the fire inside you. That curiosity, that passion, that power to dream, that creativity, that destructiveness. All are in that first spark. The fire that burned in a cave millions of years ago is still burning within us, among us, in every moment of life. It has knives of white heat. It is that adds hats to it. It is it had not had it was dead to wine. It became ash, merging with the earth. It became light, piercing the darkness. It became heat, driving away the cold. It became energy, turning the world. It became imagination, continuing to burn within humans. Now you can slowly open your eyes, but do not forget that it continues to burn within humans. Now you can slowly open your eyes, but do not forget that it continues to burn within you. That first spark is still inside us, still burning. It will never go out.